an interactive panel discussion that will be moderated by Mr. Oliver Ken. And I am bringing back, and I'd like to invite back Mr. Philippe Roussel, Mr. Julian Kim, Mr. Guy German, Sean is here. To join me on our stage on International Women's Month is Ms. Go Shok Mei, Executive Director of United Cities. This discussion will be on standards and guidelines for using technology in construction sites. So get ready to type in your questions on the chat box. And now I hand it over to you, Oliver.
Thanks, Elle. Really appreciate the moderation up to now. It's been great to listen to all the different speakers. In fact, it's really a learning journey for myself as well to understand the many different technology that has been applied in the construction sector. You know, when I was young, in my high school days, I always wanted to be a civil engineer because I was fascinated by how the buildings were built from ground up to the many stories. Eventually, I became a software engineer, never made it to putting the dream to place. But this webinar really bring back the memories of how I would have loved to play a part in the building of a structure. And we will talk about some of the things that we have gone through in the past 2.5 hours. Now, please feel free to key in your questions onto the chat. I will pick it up and direct them to the respective speakers accordingly. However, for the purpose of our session now, I would be focusing around looking at standards and guidelines for using technology in the construction site. So this is key. I mean, we can talk a lot about technology. We can talk a lot about AI and robotics, but we all need to understand how we can align ourselves appropriately to different regulations, and more importantly, to make sure that we are able to use the technology to the best. Now, before I bring you to each of the 4 speakers to share their views on this topic of standards and guidelines, I'd like to kind of summarize a little bit around what we have gone through earlier today. I picked out a couple of notes, right? First of all, it is obvious and clear that we do not want 100% automation, right? The robots are not here to take over our jobs. The humans still need to play a very important role to supervise the machine, and the machines are here to augment our capability. Well, we talk about safety reasons, we talk about productivity, and we go on the long list, which all the speakers have advocated over the past discussion. But we are definitely seeing that the humans will continue to play a role, a very important role, in the deployment of AI and robotics in the construction sector. The second point I picked up was the fact that we need to embrace technology, right? And this is important from a few fronts. One is to use technology to help us with productivity. The second is really, as we look at the new generation, the next generation of labor force, right? They are a lot more savvy. If we want them to go to do all the hard job, all the jobs where safety is an issue, we're not going to be able to attract them into this industry. However, if the industry gets a lot more tech savvy, right, that could be a motivation for the younger generation to join the industry and to help contribute to this enormous sector in our global economy. The third point I picked up from a discussion earlier today is the fact about full autonomy. Right, Prof. Chen in his keynote address shared that full autonomy is not necessarily the best thing. A follow-me approach would have been a better way of moving forward, and this is probably a target we can go after in the immediate future. Not so much in the long term. We can look at how that can be fully autonomous. But in the near future, the human to supervise the machine makes a lot more sense. Then we talk about integration of information from BIM to actual project management to site management, and possibly the need to redesign the workflow in the construction sector so that we can embrace technology. And last but not least, I thought the discussion around visualization is a very important piece, right? If we can see the visual of how the construction is taking place, and I look at Sean's video on how he can point a particular pixel and then the room pops up and you can see what's happening. So, oh, that's interesting, because then you have good visual sight of how You can monitor the development progress of a project, right? So that makes a good sense. The whole digital twin that can be put in place to enable that. One last probably cross the board point that I picked up was geographic specific requirements, right? Different countries with their climate and their geographic status and environment may need different guidelines, and that's something we have to keep in mind. Yet I like what Philip suggested. There is a need for us to collaborate. There's a need for us to come together and have that discussion. So I'm now going to turn to all my speakers, and you know who they are, right? Starting with our friend from France, Philip, from Korea or Singapore, Julian. And then we have got Guy from Israel, and finally, but not least, Sean, right? Our four gentlemen are here to look at some of the issues that I want to talk about, particularly in the area of standards and guidelines for the adoption of AI and robotics in construction. Okay, so to kind of kick this off, I'm going to get each of the speakers to share their thoughts around the importance of guidelines and standards in the adoption of AI and robotics at the construction site. So I'm going to go around the room and have each of them share 1 or 2 minutes of their thoughts in terms of the adoption of AI and robotics. So Flip, maybe I will start with you. What are your views on the adoption of AI and robotics in the construction sector? Philip?
Excuse me?
Yes. What are views on the importance of AI and robotics in the construction sector? The importance of guidelines and standards.
Guidelines and standards. I think it's important that we are able to, because the market is too small in only one country for a robotic company to make enough money to compensate the cost of the development of a robot. We need to go on international market. So we need to get the same control, the same guidelines at an international level if you want to make it. If we have to adapt a robot to each market, it will be too complicated. So yeah, we have to work together to find a way to make a robot to be able to work in all the countries without to change the guidelines.
Wow, that's very true, right? As we start to expand our product from one geography to another, we need to have common standards in order to share. And that makes good sense. So the need for collaboration becomes highly important as we start to innovate in different technology. Julian, I'm going to turn to you now. What are your views around standards and guidelines for the use of AI and robotics in construction? Julian?
Yeah, Oliver. Yeah, Oliver. Thank you. Yeah, no, I agree wholeheartedly with what Philippe is saying, because having a standard accepted global guideline would make things much easier, because you frequently, depending on the jurisdiction, depending on where you go, you will always find bureaucrats who have no idea what you're trying to do. They have some personal agendas. Different countries have different idiosyncrasies. I can certainly attest from my own country, Korea is full of government level bureaucrats that create all kinds of unnecessary hurdles for new technologies trying to be adopted. So I think an international standard would go a long way in us being able to avoid unnecessary hardships.
Very good. Thank you very much for that. Yes. And I'm going to turn to Guy now. What are your views on the importance of such standards and guidelines?
Yeah, I think not only standardization, but interoperability between different kind of products, I think will be very beneficial for the industry, like having, for example, standardization in regard to charging the robot. So like one kind of charger can be deployed for different kind of robots from different companies. And of course, sharing information between the robots can help a lot for everyone. Sharing, first of all, the digital information of the building itself, and also sharing the progress of the work, like having one robot handing over the work to another robot. But I think it is further away in the future. Like before we get to this point, we need to have stable and reliable solutions, and then we can get to the interoperability and standardization later on. And I think it will be made anyway as a natural thing, natural progress.
Yes, in fact, you brought up a very important point, right? The interoperability between systems, right, or between the bots, right? Clearly, if we're going to have bots work in the construction site, there'll be many different types, different functionality, and for productivity to be maintained across the construction arena, they need to talk to each other, just like we humans need to talk to we humans as co-workers on the construction site. So that's something which probably down the road we need to look at. Stabilizing the current set of products is definitely an important criteria for now. But as we move forward and as we start to get the machines to talk to each other, we definitely need to lay down the respective standards. A good point there. I'm going to turn to Sean. Sean, what are your views on this particular point?
Yes, Oliver. So, if we were to look historically, construction has been very regimented with documentation because it's quite a complicated process. The first one that came out would be BIM, right? So we spoke about BIM earlier, and we are familiar with BIM. That sort of set the standards of interoperability of different systems, different way of communicating between the architects to the drawers to the draftsman, and then to the person on the construction site. If we look at AI and robotics, right, that's also going to have their own version of a BIM to bring this data together and to be able to evolve and understand what our BIM is and how the robots and the AIs can bring this together. Now, in the area where I'm a bit more sort of have a little bit more knowledge would be in managing drones and the capture of visualization. It started with manually managing a drone. Now we can automate the drone, and currently we are researching on how to operate swarms so that you can capture the whole lot of stuff at the same time with the use of swarm technology. So now these are all disruptive technology that's coming in, and it's going to evolve as different industries sort of adopt different ways of leveraging and utilizing this technology. And I think we will see the conformance of certain standards coming through as and when this disruptive technology gets adopted, and then improved and assimilated into the daily usage of these projects, right? Unfortunately, construction is more of a laggard in terms of technology adoption. So basically, they will have a lot more stable and mature technology by the time it's fully adopted on site.
Well said. Well said. I think four of you certainly have given a very clear indication of what's needed. In order for us to progress with the technology, standards are going to be key, cross-border as well as between machine to machine, and more importantly, how we can actually involve the human in the process of the redesign workflow. I know some of you have talked about the challenges in adopting robotics in your presentation, and what can be done about it. I'd like to take this opportunity for each of you, perhaps to highlight any one or two critical challenge that we need to quickly overcome, feeling which getting into the standardization space could be difficult. And I like what Guy is suggesting, right? Let's perfect, stabilize the respective products first before I talk about being able to interoperate between the machines. So if I could go around the room again and say, what would be one or two major challenges that you want to highlight, which is making adoption of robotics in the construction sector difficult, and we should kind of really home in and figure out what we can do to overcome that difficulty in order for us to progress. So I'm going to turn to Philip again. Philip, what would be one or two difficulty that you believe we need to handle and overcome quickly for us to progress further in order to adopt robotics in construction?
So I think the first one is money. So to develop a robot is very expensive, and most of the robotic companies doing this kind of business are startups, and so they need to find the budget. I don't know if it's the same in all the countries, but for France, it's very difficult to get investors to put money in the robotic business because it's too long and too risky for them. So I take the opportunity to make some advertising for the event I am organizing. So it's an event, so its name is Rob Invest. And we invite, if you have investors in the room, to come on 29th of March to participate to this event, where we are going to have meetings between startups and investors. So the money, I think, is the first point. I would say that the second point, that most of the robotic companies are used to work in the industry business. They know the codes of selling to industries, they know the channels and so on. We don't have channel to sell robotics to the construction market. And we need to work on this. This is not a technical issue. This is a marketing and the sale issue.
Well said. Philip, I'm going to invite you to type that link on the chat box, so that everyone sitting in right now could take a look at that link and copy it down. I'm sure some of them will be interested to participate in your event on the 29th of March. But you brought up two very important points. Right? One is the fact that in order for us to invest and build robots to help in the construction sector, money is a big topic to discuss, right? And at the same time, I agree with you, the go-to-market is a challenge. The need to have the right channel to go into the entire system, the whole value chain, to participate is going to be key. I'm going to turn to Julian and Guy, because both of you created robots, right? Both of you have robots that are already in the construction sector, right? Given that you've actually built a robot, maybe you found a way of overcoming the money problem and you found a way of dealing with the channel problem. Maybe both of you could share what are your perspective in this area. So maybe start with Julian.
Yeah, listen, marketing and money is probably the one thing that I worry about the most. That's what really keeps me awake at nights. You know, it's not the technology. I think, you know, I'm not a robotics engineer or an expert, unlike these other gentlemen, but technology is not the problem. I mean, we know what to do with technology. We have the experts to make our robots even better. But marketing and money definitely is to me the most significant issue. And I think maybe one suggestion would be, okay, we each let us say we are each responsible at least for our own country. So, you know, we are, you know, French in France, Israeli in Israel, you know, Malaysian in Malaysia. So you take care of your own countries. Now, the issue is, in order for our business to grow, to reach a steady state of business where, listen, the best kind of capital, the best kind of money for R&D are not handouts by the government, are not handouts by the academia. They're money that we can earn ourselves organically. And that's the best kind of money to be investing in creating better robots. What we want to do is we want to take, conceivably, we have the wherewithal to take our companies from 0 to 1. What we really need to do is take it from 1 to 100 in order so that we can become a profitable running business. And to be able to do that, we need to be a little bit more global. You know, each of us, we don't operate per se, let's say, in the US market, which is a very large market. Western Europe is a very large market, but in my case, Korea is not going to be enough to be able to create a well-run, profitable company. So in order to do that, I think one of the biggest challenges that I've always had is, for example, if I say, okay, I read something, I read an article, I meet somebody and says, you know, France has a vibrant art mural market. And perhaps there are many artists who would like to know about our robots. we don't know who to go to. And thankfully, through this forum, I met Philippe, so now I'm going to go to Philippe and ask a question in a few days. But if we can somehow organize a network of, for a lack of a better term, matchmakers, so that if we say, I want to explore Israel for my robots, can there be a market there? Is somebody interested over there? We need somebody, maybe Guy, to say, okay, you know what? If you come to Israel, let me see if I can find companies in Israel who want to be your partner, or want to license from you, or want to manufacture in Israel, and work on this together. That is the one help that I think certainly RoboPrint needs for every country. And I've been, I've been working to try to meet people in different markets.
Please reach AIRC via Oliver.
Yes.
Right.
I was about to wait for Julian to complete and mention AIRC.
Right. Okay. Anyway, so to me, that's the most important thing in terms of marketing and money, how to grow this business and make it successful.
Right. Thank you, Julian.
Yeah.
I think your points are very key. Marketing and dollars are the two important pieces. Philip, thanks for jumping in to talk about AIRC. So Julian, I think if you're looking at the Israeli market, one of the participants in the audience right now is Mr. Yossi Lahat. And Yossi actually chairs the International Cooperation Committee for AIRC, which is the Israeli Robotics Society. And he also chairs the Professional Committee on Innovation Cross-Border, right, for the GRC, the Global Robot Cluster. So that's definitely one person to talk to be able to see how some of this business matching can take place. The Global Robot Cluster does have a number of initiatives, right, that we focus on in order to look at how different robotic clusters in different geographies can come together to find common interests, right? The discussion on using robots and AI in construction is one of the initiatives, and there are a couple more that are lined up. So definitely possible, and the a global organization like GRC is definitely well positioned to perform that task and support companies like yourself and many others, all right, in looking at possible collaboration and working together. Now we do have a friend from Israel, right? So Guy, let's hear your thoughts. What do you think are the highlights of the challenges, and how can we overcome them?
Yeah. So first of all, Julian, I wouldn't recommend you to looking for the next market specifically in Israel. Israel is a very, very small country. We actually found it too small for us to start, and we started in Germany. So we have a robot here in Israel, and we did some pilots here as well. But in terms of our first market, we are looking to Europe and a bit of a larger markets in terms of the ability to adopt. Also, I need to apologize specifically to Julian, not including RoboPrint in my slide on the facade painting robot. So that's that. However, I need to second Philippe and Julian on my main concern, because yeah, of course, like as a CEO of a startup company, we look for money and we are interested in marketing, and I would say yeah, this is a very, very main thing, especially for us. We raised not a lot of money, and we're not a lot of people. We raised less than 10% from our direct competitors, another US-based startup. So yeah, it is a concern. But if I need to choose my number one concern, what makes me up at night is the product. I think, I mean, I was super impressed by what Julian presented on RoboPrint, on the different products. They looked amazing to me. But I think that the problem is not solved, not by us yet, and not by anyone. I think it's a very, very complicated problem, more complicated than most people realize. And it's a very deep tech problem. It's not application. It's not having, okay, we'll take motors, we'll take some open source code, and we can mumble jumble it together, and we have a product. I think for real product to succeed, there's still some really deep technologies problems that needs to be solved. if the robots are not able to have really good real-world perception and ability to know what they're doing, they are relying on their operators, they are bound to fail or not scale. So they can be a really nice project for a company to run projects with their engineers and do some projects here and there, but it's not going to solve the problem on a large scale globally. Talking about millions of people that are short in this industry, and we want to grow the industry even further. Looking 10 years from now, the problem is going to be much, much greater. So having a really nice solution running by some engineers is not going to make it. It's not going to make the cut. It's maybe going to make someone rich with a few millions of dollars, but not more than that. So in order to really change, to really disrupt this industry, I think the product is a key, and the product is not a simple one. And the technology behind the product is a difficult technology, and like really smart people need to sit down and develop it. And so this is my main concern, having a robot that not only solve one case but solve many cases and is usable and is a real product. That's the real challenge in my opinion. So that's what makes me up at night.
That's a very interesting point. In fact, I do see that situation, because in the construction sector, there are just too much to deal with, right? And highly complicated, right? And hence you need to have a robot that can really kind of connect through, and the technology today may still not be fully ready for that. Now, before I jump to Sean, I think Sean may have that answer, because he's talking about simplicity is complexity resolved, right? So let's hear how that can be done. But before I do that, I just want to draw your attention to the chat, right? I want to draw attention to the chat. There are two comments that have been put on the chat. One is by Yuriki. Yuriki is the chairman of the Finnish Robotics Society and a good supporter of the Global Robot Cluster. And he mentions of the interest by Odense in Denmark. A link is provided there. So, for anyone of you who is interested, look at construction robots, automation construction robots in Denmark. There's a link there. At the same time, he has also shared another website that deals with that's Zen Robotics, that deals with managing waste. So do take a look at them, right? Those are definitely possible opportunity to do collaboration. Sean, so simplicity is complexity resolved. So looking at what Guy has just suggested, right? What are the thoughts on your side? I guess in response to him, at the same time, also would like to hear what you think are the challenges in adopting AI and robotics in the construction sector. Over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Oliver. So I think I'd like to echo what Julian was saying about getting from 0 to 1 is easy. Getting from 1 to 100 is difficult. The 0 to 1 bit, in my experience, is we think it's about technology, but it's actually about adoption, and it's about utilization and use cases. And this comes back to what Guy was saying. As we put more technology and more utilization of deep tech into the construction side, we find more and more users as we engage the customer. So, for example, when drones were first available, the drones were just used as surveillance, right, to ensure that safety measures protocols were utilized, right? And then later on, they say, hey, while we have these pictures, I can also now do some correction detection or material management. Where do I place this material? What do I do with them? And then later on, when they saw that they could actually get some level of detail, then they went to look at, okay, how do we use this to identify defects along the construction site. Now, what I'm trying to get to is that we start with a particular idea of, okay, technology can do so much, but as we engage with the user or the subject matter expert on site, they show us how the industry uses it more and more and more, and so we sort of have that deep level. And when we are able to sort of engage the multiple use case for a construction site, then the adoption certainly becomes, that's where we go from the 1 to the 100. But usually the 0 to 1 is, when we found maybe 2 or 3 use cases. But we get from 1 to 100 when we find, another 200 use cases for the same set of investment. And that's where, we start to gel. But given the infancy of some of these technology and the lack of adoption at this stage, right? Because, we are really at the visionary stage to try to get this into the industry. We really will work with the visionaries of the market that's willing to take the risk, utilize technology to improve their own operations. But the way we make money is to make sure that we can also reach the laggards that are willing to invest. And their only question is, okay, how much money do I make by buying this, right? Or if I'm going to spend $1 million, can I save $5 million? That's their only question. They don't care about the technology. They don't care about deep tech. They don't care about standards. They don't care about processors or integration of data. All they want to know is how much, right? But we get there when we we will get there when we continue to invest and evolve the 0 to 1 stage. And so, in the construction industry, it's quite interesting because there's so much of stable and fundamental processes that's already in place, right? And because it's also quite regulated in terms to ensure that safety of the occupants of those buildings or the infrastructure. There's a lot of safety mechanisms that are put in place to ensure that if they do adopt this technology, it helps them drive faster. Now, my last example I want to give is that some of the technology that I was showing you reduces the management time from 3 months to 9 days, right? And it's very impressive, especially from a surveyor perspective, how they manage and utilize the data that's now available to them versus walking on field, right? And so in some of our customers, we have, they've told us that, wow, this process used to take us 3 months, 9 months. We are now taking weeks to get the same data at reduced cost, reduced manpower. Unfortunately, it's also evolving jobs for the surveyors. Instead of walking the jungle and poking that stick, they now have to re-skill themselves into something different. Back to you, Oliver.
Thanks. Julian, if I would summarize what you just said, right, 2 words, user validation. I think that's going to be extremely key. And the challenge with the construction sector is that too many users, right? Everyone has got in its own set of mind what you want to do, right? So in order to provide a solution that satisfies all the users, it's going to be very difficult. In the traditional IT solutions, right, you have an accounting department, you've got a warehouse team, you have kind of a very captive set of users that you want to satisfy. But when you get into the construction, there's so many groups interfacing and connected to what you are trying to offer that makes it really difficult. So the user interface user validation becomes an extremely important point to cover. And I guess that kind of summarize out some of the points that have been brought up, right? When we talk about putting money in to invest, sometimes we invest in a specific technology or specific solution. But when you roll it out to the users, you find that there is no one final stakeholder that owns everything. There are probably a number of people that wants to have that say. And I like what you say around, as you get it validated, you probably need to kind of be flexible to kind of adapt to the different needs. And hence your product becomes a lot more functional, right? And users are more ready to say, yes, that makes sense for me, and they prefer to jump in. But in fact, what you've touched on, Sean, is the fact that it is a question I'm going to ask next, right? Given the issues and the challenges that we kind of talk about now, right? Whether it's money, whether it's marketing distribution channel, whether it's scalability from 0 to 1 and 1 to many, what would you advise? Right? What would you advise in terms of the construction developers or the contractors? What would you advise them to take as next steps as they start to explore the adoption of AI and robotics in the construction space? So if now you come across a developer, right, or a contractor who's going to build some structure, right? I call it a structure, right? What advice would you give them to encourage them to adopt the technology? Let me start off with Guy and Julian this time around because they have got products. So how do you bring a product to a buyer, a user, and encourage him to adopt your technology? Guy, shall I start with you?
Yeah. So we did a few pilots with general contractors in Europe, and actually, it regards also maybe to the marketing area. A lot of our traction comes from inbounds. So we don't do any marketing. Just the same way you found us. This is a very small ecosystem. It's a very blue ocean, and people hear about us, and there is a need in the market. There is a need for automation. There is a need for robotics. We see this. Of course, not everyone is primed for adopting high tech. Not everyone is an early adopter. That's for sure. So if we go and approach 10 companies, some of them will say, okay, robots are not for us, leave us alone, we don't care about the numbers. This, of course, is going to happen, but there are so many others that are willing to find such a solution that we don't see this as an obstacle for our revenues. We see the readiness of the product as right now the obstacle to generate more revenues, and not the market demand. So we had inbound, and it was pretty easy to convince them because the numbers are very clear. You see the capacity of the workers, and in some cases, like there is no question about how much is needed to be performed every day, because there is a schedule for the project. So if, like, for example, it's painting, covering areas like painting ceilings, there needs to be 1,000 square meters painted every day. You can't go slower than that because you don't comply to the project requirement. Yeah, and you cannot go faster than that because there are still other people, like the areas are not ready to be painted. So that's the capacity. And so how many people and how much do you pay for them to do the job, and how difficult it is for you to accomplish this, and the equivalent is to do this with a robot. And it's very easy to measure, and it's very easy to convince that, yeah, that's a good product, that's the right way to go. The gap is still, how do you make this subcontractor, the one that is in charge of the project, to actually be the one that operates the robots, and find and close the loop here, and find that that there is a full solution for them, not just providing them services, which is not something that is scalable. So So yeah, so it's I don't think if you have, again, the product is the key. If you have a good product, then there is value. If there is a value, you'll find customers. I'm sure anywhere in the world, you'll find customers that appreciate good product, because good product is good for everyone. Good for the one, it's good for the seller, and also good for the buyer, because it changes the equation. And that's what robots usually do. They did it in other industries as well, and they are bound to do this in the construction industry as well.
So Julian, let's hear from you. What do you think?
I have okay, maybe it's because of my background, but I have a slightly different perspective than Guy on this matter. When I was going to business school more than 40 years ago now, I remember one of the things that the marketing professor said is that engineers and inventors who come up with great products, many times they think that if you build a better mousetrap, that people will line up outside of your door to buy your product. And the message there was that just having a better product is not enough. And I think that one of the things that the robotics industry has not done as well as other industries is market itself. I've dabbled in a lot of different industries, in mining, in biotechnology, in medical. I mean, I'm trying to set up a venture capital to invest in medical technologies. What the problem with robotics is that it needs to generate more marketing momentum. It needs to become a little bit more savvy in terms of people wanting it. And I don't think it's, because I can see it all the time. I mean, the presentations that we've seen today, they're fantastic technologies. It's stuff that people should want. But just because it's something that people should want, it doesn't mean that people are going to actually, buy it. People don't always buy the best products. And it's one of the truisms, though, is, Guy mentioned this, and Oliver, you mentioned it as well. The subcontractor who has to risk his own internal company reputation in a way to say, okay, you know what? Robotics is the way to go. This is going to make my life a lot easier. It's going to save the business money. It's going to save us time. I'm going to recommend to my boss that we lay out this money, that we're going to pay 20, 30,000, 100,000, whatever is required, because I'm going to convince my boss that we should use this service, that we should use this technology. It's a hard decision. I remember a long time ago, I think it was in the 70s, or I don't want to give out my age, but 70s or 80s, there was a commercial in the US about, it was an IBM commercial. And some of us may still remember that IBM once used to be the powerhouse in computers, in technology. And one of their ads said nobody ever got fired for using an IBM. So basically it's saying that IBM was trying to give out the message that if you use the true and tested standard rather than going for the risky new technologies, at least your job is going to be safe. So to me, this is kind of like I found in Singapore, for example, that oftentimes our technology does manage to convince the manager at the subcontractor level, even the directors, but it takes a little bit of audacity to say, okay, I'm going to talk to my CEO, I'm going to talk to my managing director and say, let's use this. Let's spend our hard-earned company money to invest in this technology. To me, that is a difficult obstacle. I'm sure we'll overcome it one day, much like many other technologies have. But robotics, in a world of competing technologies for money, for some reason is slightly less sexy than other areas. And I think this is one thing that the robotics industry has to and will, I'm sure, at some point overcome. It's kind of, what's weird is when you watch any of these Marvel universe movies, the Avengers and whatever, you always have the super rich billionaire who's a superhero who's created these huge, super wealthy industries based on robotic products. But we don't really have an equivalent in the real world. Maybe, I don't know, maybe the closest we come to is Elon Musk.
Elon Musk.
But Elon Musk is not robotics. So
he's about to go into robotics as well.
All right, okay. So we need
autonomous vehicle is a robot.
Okay, right. But we need to find the real world example of some of these Marvel superhero billionaires who've made their billions out of robotics.
Absolutely. I think you have definitely.
Let me just say one thing, Julian. I think that if there is a risk, it's not a good product. That's the only thing I want to say. So if it's a risk, it's perception.
It's perception. It's perception. I think it's. I think some technologies are absolutely perfect, absolutely work, but it's overcoming the perception of people who have to pay the dollars for it. And I think that is a challenge for any product for that matter.
Thanks for that. I mean, very interesting views. I do have some thoughts around what the Guy and Julian just mentioned. But before I go to that, I wanted to see if Philip or Sean has got anything you want to add on to it.
No, I think Julian and Guy sort of covered that really well. I mean, that's been my experience as well in terms of trying to get that adoption right. It's the lower level might love it, the top level might find it hard to swallow it or part with the money, especially if it's not proven, right? So that's really the tough bit.
Sure. Philip, any comments you want to add on?
Yeah, I fully agree with Julian. We are marketing guys in the middle of thousands of engineers, and it's difficult to convince them that they have to not only to make good products, but they have to spend time and money to sell them. And we need to take care of something that I learned when I was working before in other industry. You know that, Oliver. We got a book that was very interesting. It was Crossing the Chasm, and the chasm is something that happens between the early adopters and the mainstream market. And we are at the early adopter stage today. And before becoming a mainstream market, we have a lot of work to do, and we have to take care not to make some mistakes. So if you find this book, Crossing the Chasm, take it and read it. We'll see that it's not finished. There is a lot of work to do. And it's not because we have the right products that we have the right solution for the market. So we have to take care of that.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thanks for the suggestion. We do have a question on the chat. I'd like to invite all the panel members to take a look at the question. But as you think through how we should respond, I wanted to share an idea based on the discussion we just had. Yeah, it appears that the investment in a technology is high, right? So for a developer or contractor or somebody who wants to bring up the table up this suggestion to the CEO or the top level management to decide to invest in a robot, it's going to be difficult, a big hurdle. What about the possibility where we open up a new channel of distributors who are prepared to invest in the technology, but actually become a subcontractor that supports and lease out the machine on a pay-per-use basis, right? Last year, when I chaired a similar panel on the use of AI and robotics in the construction sector, I discovered that there was a Dutch company who actually worked with a Malaysian company who is a subcontractor to many projects. And they actually brought the machine in and they're prepared to lease the machine out to different projects in different countries in Southeast Asia, right? And they're doing pretty well. So busy that it was actually very difficult to invite them to this year's forum, right? I wanted to see how they progress. Well, they did tell me that the machine they brought in cost close to $2 million, right? This was a huge 3D printing machine, and they brought in one for the Malaysian market, one for the Singapore market. And during the forum itself, we had a couple of hands come out from Indonesia who wants to kind of list the machine, and they have to kind of join the queue, right? So maybe the pay-per-use idea could be an initial answer to Guy's mention of the pilot, right? And of course, Julian also talked about the ability to get the users to be familiar with it, to like it. So if you have a partner who says, I'm prepared to work with you as a product owner, right? But now I've got all these channels, I'll bring it to all the channels, all the different projects. And instead of having them buy, I work on a pay-per-use model, right? And we try to get a lot of adoption. We try to get a lot of this group to invest in a pilot, which is not going to be heavy duty, but sufficient enough to pay for a portion of the cost, right, over an X month period, right? And then we generate results from it. So that could be a new model, or maybe it's already being practiced, I don't know, right? But a model where we can probably try to prove the technology and possibly even get the solution validated by the demand drivers. Yeah. So any comments on that in terms of establishing this particular channel that can achieve that?
Yeah, Oliver, RoboPrint actually is more of a pay-per-use business model than a selling model.
Yeah.
So even that, I do agree that getting adoption is easier on a pay-per-use model. We lease our services, we do projects. We don't necessarily look to sell the machines each time, but it's a good idea, but it is still challenging to break over that barrier.
Okay.
But I agree with you. Yeah.
Any other comments on that? If not, then I'm going to turn to the question in the chat box, right? In line with the zero carbon goal and sustainability, right? How are robots in the construction fitting into these goals and be able to curb the climate change challenge? right? I'm reading it verbatim, right? So I guess the person here is asking questions around how construction robots can play a part to contribute to the zero carbon goal that we are hearing so much nowadays. Free for all. Anyone want to put up a hand to comment on it?
Well, I don't think that robots alone can do that, but robots can participate to that. I know some projects that, for example, one of the issue in construction is the concrete that is cost a lot of CO2, and there are projects to create the bricks from the excavation results. So you take the excavation. I don't know the word in English. So you make the excavation. You take the earth. You take the material, and you put it in and you make a brick on the site of the construction. And this is a system that is using robots, but it's not fully robotics. But it's a way to make trucks running everywhere, to make concrete and so on. So this is a way to make some sustainable constructions. But wood construction is another one, and a lot of those solutions.
Interesting.
On-site prefabrication, I think that's what Philip is trying to say. Yeah.
So on-site prefabrication could be a possible way to contribute right to the goal, but may not fully be able to support that.
Yeah.
In the interest of time, I realized that we've been running for almost 3.5 hours now in that webinar. Right? Interesting discussion. I really thank all of you. But before you leave, I'd like you to perhaps give just one-liner. What advice would you give to the construction sector in terms of adopting AI and robotics in their work? Just one-liner, right? What advice would you give as the next steps for them to consider after this webinar, right? So Philip, I'll start with you. What would one advice you give to the audience?
Thank you. I think that the thing is to be open, to talk to the people, not to have preconceived ideas. So to talk together, robotics people and construction people, to find the right solution.
Right. To be open to technology adoption. I hear you. Yeah. Julian?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of reasons to adopt robotics, obviously, but I think if there is one overriding consideration would be that if you can save money, if you can save time, if you can do all of that, but if you can really minimize the risk to human injury or death in some, so if you can make construction work safer for humans, I think that should be the primary consideration for why you would adopt robotics. And if at the same time you get, you save money, you save time, and all the rest that comes with robotics, well, why not?
Right.
So
right. Yeah. Consider the need to minimize human risk. Yeah. And as a result, robotics can play a part to do that. Guy, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that what everyone in the construction industry needs to ask themselves, first of all, if they have a problem. If they don't have a problem, I don't think, it will be very difficult to market, even cost saving. But if you have a problem, and there is a problem, and the problem is going to be on the verge of a catastrophe or a very big crisis, and the problem is that there are no people to actually do the job. There is a growing shortage of labor. And if you have a problem, look for a solution. And if the solution is good, then adopt it. If it's not good, they don't use it. But the first question is, do you have a problem? And what we see is that there are a lot of people have this problem, and they also can see beyond their shoulder a year, 2 years, and 10 years ahead, and seeing that this problem is going to really be critical to their business. And so they need to find solutions to this.
So problem assessment, right? Determine how critical are the current problems they're facing. You highlighted particularly labor shortage, right? If down the road labor shortage is going to be a key issue, then they should seriously consider robotics and automation. All right, good advice. Sean, how about you?
Yeah, I think for me it's back to my tagline, which is simplicity is complexity resolved. Because yes, if we can make it simple, we can find solutions to fix the problem. And robotics and AI are part and parcel of that solution to fix that problem and make it simple for us to be able to run and operate a construction effectively, efficiently, and productively.
I hope you have trademarked that.
No, thanks to you, Oliver.
You should trademark, right? Simplicity is complexity resolved. That you should trademark that. Thank you. I think that's great to really consider how we can use technology automation to simplify the complexity involved, and hence adoption of AI and robotics could be the solution. Well, we probably have come to the end of this webinar. All right. Thanks very much to 4 of you, the speakers, Mr. Philip Purcell from FFC Robotics, GRC as well. Really appreciate your inputs, your survey of the technology in the construction space using robotics is fantastic. There are a number of requests for your presentation material. So we'll definitely try to do that. Julian, great technology. I love to see that technology eventually paint a building that I will buy soon. Hopefully, then they can start painting my building wall, right? And Guy, I love your product. I think the work that it does is fantastic. Yeah. Definitely would love to see how we can explore the use of the technology into the Southeast Asia region. Definitely possible for that. Right. Thanks for it. And John, remember the trademark. Simplicity is complexity resolved. Right. And thanks to everyone for participating in this webinar. I really appreciate your participation and your time. I hope you have benefited and enjoyed the discussion so far. We do have a whole list of very prominent and experts in this area. We hope to share a lot more as we go along. This is Oliver Tian from APARA, also from the Global Robot Cluster. Thank you very much for participating, and we hope you have a good evening and good afternoon. Bye for all. Bye now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Oliver.